Alan Ladd truly hated him more than anyone. Alan Ladd was born on September 3, 1913, in Hot Springs, Arkansas. His full name was Alan Walbridge Ladd. At first glance, it might sound like he was born into comfort and opportunity, but his life started with struggle. When Alan was just a baby, his father died suddenly. This left his mother, Ina Raleigh, to raise him alone. During a time when life was already hard for single parents, Alan and his mother moved to Oklahoma City, where she tried her best to provide for them. She worked odd jobs and did everything she could to keep food on the table. It wasn't an easy life. They often lived in small rooms, sometimes barely affording rent. Alan grew up knowing what hunger felt like, what loss felt like, and what it meant to fight for survival. When Alan was still young, his mother decided to move again, this time to California, hoping for a better future. But things didn't magically get easier. In Los Angeles, Alan went to school, but he was small for his age. Other kids teased him for being short and quiet. Still, Alan had something deep inside, a determination to prove everyone wrong. He started working at a young age, taking any job he could find. He delivered papers, worked in stores, and even picked fruit to help his mother. Alan loved sports, especially swimming and track. He wanted to become an athlete, and he even set a school record for high jumping. But fate had different plans. During a practice session, he had a terrible accident. He fell and injured himself badly, ending any dream of becoming an athlete. After high school, Alan didn't know what to do. He took small jobs, anything to earn a living. At one point, he even worked at Warner Bros. as a grip boy, helping move cameras and lights around. No one knew that this small, quiet kid working behind the scenes would one day become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Alan's mother always believed he was meant for more. She pushed him to try acting, even though he was shy. So he joined small local theater groups and began auditioning for minor film roles. It wasn't easy. Directors thought he was too short, too soft-spoken, not hero material. But Alan didn't give up. He knew deep down that his strength wasn't in his height, it was in his eyes, his voice, and his quiet confidence. Little did the world know that this boy, who once struggled just to eat, would soon rise to become one of the most recognizable faces of Hollywood's golden age. Alan Ladd's journey was only beginning. After years of small jobs and endless rejection, Alan Ladd was close to giving up on acting. Hollywood wasn't kind to men like him. At just 5'6", he didn't fit the image of the tall, muscular movie hero that studios loved. Casting directors liked his face, but they didn't see him as a leading man. They called him too quiet, too small, and too soft. But Alan had something most actors didn't: patience and persistence. He started by taking tiny parts, sometimes not even getting his name in the credits. He'd walk on screen for a few seconds, say one line, and vanish. Still, he showed up every day, learned from everyone around him, and watched how the real stars worked. Then came a turning point: a radio audition. Alan's calm, deep voice caught the attention of producer Sue Carroll. She was impressed, not just by his voice but by his quiet confidence. Soon, she became more than his agent. She became the person who would change his life forever. Sue helped Alan find better roles and taught him how to make his small size work in his favor. He didn't need to shout or fight for attention. His stillness became his power. In 1942, Alan finally got his big break in the movie This Gun for Hire. He played a cold, mysterious hitman named Raven. Audiences couldn't take their eyes off him. He didn't talk much, but every look and every pause said more than words ever could. That was Alan Ladd's magic. He could make silence speak louder than dialogue. The film was a massive success, and overnight, Alan became one of Hollywood's hottest stars. People loved his quiet strength and piercing eyes. He wasn't like other heroes. He didn't yell or boast. He just stood there, calm and deadly, and somehow you knew he was the one to watch. Over the next few years, Alan starred in hit after hit: The Glass Key, The Blue Dahlia, and Shane, the movie that made him a legend. In Shane, he played a lone gunfighter trying to leave his violent past behind. It was more than a role, it was who Alan really was, a man haunted by his past, fighting for peace in a world that wouldn't let him rest. Alan Ladd had finally proven everyone wrong. The boy who once worked behind the scenes was now the face on every poster. Hollywood had a new kind of hero, quiet, humble, and unforgettable. Alan Ladd's rise to fame didn't just bring him success, it brought him love too. The woman who helped him find his place in Hollywood, Sue Carroll, became the most important person in his life. She was older than him, wise, and already knew the business inside out, while others doubted him. Sue believed he had something special. She became his manager, his guide, and later, his wife. Alan and Sue married in 1942. The same year this gun for hire made him a star. Together, they became one of Hollywood's most powerful couples. Sue handled his career, negotiated his contracts, and made sure the studios treated him right. Alan, on the other hand, stayed quiet and focused on his work. He wasn't the kind of man who enjoyed Hollywood parties or gossip. He preferred quiet nights at home with Sue and their children. But fame has a price. Behind the perfect image of a Hollywood couple, Alan was fighting his own battles. He suffered from deep insecurity, always afraid that people only liked him for his looks or his fame. He often said he didn't feel like a star, just a man doing his job, and that pressure started to build. Sue tried her best to keep things together. She protected him from studio drama and made sure he stayed out of trouble. But as the years passed, the spotlight became heavier. Alan was getting older, and new stars were taking over the screen. His confidence began to fade. At home, things weren't easy either. Alan struggled with insomnia and constant stress. He started drinking to calm his nerves, something that slowly became a habit. Sue stood by him through it all, never giving up on the man she believed in. Even when the studios began offering fewer roles, she kept fighting for his place in Hollywood. Together, they raised 3 children: David, Alana, and Alan Ladd Jr.B., who would one day become one of Hollywood's top producers. Despite the struggles, Alan always tried to be a good father. He was quiet, loving, and wanted his kids to have a better life than he did. But as the 1950s came to an end, Alan's career began to slip away. The man who once ruled the box office was now being forgotten, and no amount of love could fully protect him from the pain that came with that. Alan Ladd's marriage had survived fame, pressure, and heartbreak, but the hardest years were still ahead, because soon he would come face to face with the one man he truly hated more than anyone else. In Hollywood, Alan Ladd was known for his quiet nature and calm personality. He wasn't loud or arrogant like many other stars of his time, but even the calmest man has limits. And there was one person in Hollywood who brought out a side of Alan that very few had ever seen, a man he truly hated more than anyone. That man was Jack Warner, the head of Warner Bros. Studios, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. To the world, Jack Warner was a successful producer who made stars, but to Alan, he was the man who tried to break him. Their conflict started in the early 1950s, when Alan was already a big name. Warner Bros. Wanted him to sign a long-term contract, one that would control what roles he took, how much he earned, and even where he worked. Alan refused. He didn't want to be owned by a studio. He wanted freedom to pick his own scripts and work with people he respected. That didn't sit well with Jack Warner. Warner started using his power to make Alan's life difficult. He spread rumors that Alan was hard to work with, that he was too short to be a real star. He blocked movie deals and made sure other studios hesitated to hire him. It was a cruel move, and Alan knew it. He hated how one man could control the careers of so many talented actors just for power. Alan wasn't a fighter by nature, but when pushed, he could be fierce. He started producing his own films, taking creative control of his career to prove he didn't need Warner Bros. Movies like Shane showed that Alan could be the hero on his own terms. He became a symbol of independence in a time when studios ruled everything. But the damage was done. The constant battles with Warner had drained him. Hollywood can be a beautiful dream, but behind the lights, it's full of politics and revenge. Alan learned that the hard way. Jack Warner may have been just one man, but to Alan, he represented everything wrong with the business he loved. Alan once told a close friend, "They don't care about you when the lights go out." That one line said it all. The fight left him emotionally exhausted. The man who once smiled quietly through every challenge now carried bitterness in his heart. Alan had proven his worth, but at a price, because while he had defeated his enemies in the public eye, the real war was happening inside him, and that silent battle was one he could never truly win. By the late 1950s, the world that once adored Alan Ladd had started to move on. New stars were taking over the screen, younger, taller, louder faces that Hollywood now wanted. The quiet hero who once ruled the box office was fading into the background. Alan tried to keep working. He still had that same calm voice, that same piercing gaze, but the offers were slowing down, and the pressure of staying relevant began to crush him. To the world, he was still the star of Shane the Strong, silent cowboy who walked away into the sunset, but behind that image, Alan Ladd was breaking down. He had always been shy. Even when he was famous, he hated interviews, hated attention, and preferred to stay away from Hollywood parties. But as his fame faded, the loneliness grew. His insecurities, the same ones he had carried since childhood, came flooding back. He often told friends he didn't feel like he belonged anywhere anymore. Alan began drinking more heavily. He used alcohol and sleeping pills to escape his sadness, to quiet the thoughts that kept him awake at night. He didn't want to worry his family, but everyone could see that something was wrong. His wife, Sue, tried to help, just like she always had, but sometimes love isn't enough to save someone from their own pain. In January 1964, Alan was found unconscious at his home in Palm Springs. He had accidentally mixed alcohol with strong medication. It was too late to save him. Alan Ladd was gone, only 50 years old. His death shocked Hollywood. Fans couldn't believe that the strong, fearless cowboy from Shane could die so young and so quietly, but in a way, it reflected who he truly was, a man who never liked the spotlight, who lived and died with quiet dignity. Alan Ladd was buried in Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. At his funeral, many stars came to pay their respects, people who knew how hard he had worked, how much he had given to the industry. His wife, Sue, stood silently by his casket, heartbroken but proud. She had been there from the very beginning, and she was there at the end. Even though Alan's life ended far too soon, his legacy never faded. Shane remains one of the greatest westerns ever made, and Alan's performance is still remembered as one of Hollywood's finest. He showed the world that strength doesn't always come from size or power. Sometimes it comes from silence. Alan Ladd's story is both inspiring and heartbreaking. He rose from poverty to stardom, fought against the odds, and became a legend. But in the end, the same world that made him famous also broke him. The quiet hero of Hollywood's golden age finally rode off into the sunset, and this time, he never came back.